Tributes have been paid to the last surviving member of the Everly Brothers, whose music is credited with influencing musicians including the Bee Gees and the Beatles.
Don died at home, aged 84. He and his brother Phil had hits worldwide in the late 1950s and early 1960s. David Sillitoe looks back at his life.
Dream, 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 dream.
The Everly Brothers. In the years between Elvis joining the army and the arrival of the Beatles, Don and Phil ruled the airwaves. Donny, here on the right, got his first break on the radio when he was just 8 years old.
They had a 15-minute radio show on Saturdays, known as Little Donny, and I used to get to read the commercials.
Be sure, if you have corns and calluses, send for Foster's 30-minute Wonder Corn and Callus Remover. $1 will bring you a big 1-ounce bottle.
Cathy's Clown, written by Don, was their biggest single. But as the 60s progressed, fashions changed, and the close harmony began to break down.
Being a duet in the music business, and especially the kind of duet Phil and I are, close harmony and nose to nose right up on stage there every night. When we were working, that takes a lot of strain on the relationship.
The brothers split. 10 years later, there was a brief reunion, but Don, liberal, outgoing, was in many ways the opposite of his more conservative brother. They went years without speaking. But when Phil died in 2014, it was a reminder of what they could only do together. The heartache and harmony of the Everly Brothers.
Let's speak to the broadcaster Bob Harris, who hosts the Old Grey Whistle Test on Radio 2. Lovely to speak to you this morning. Thank you so much for being with us. It's quite clear, isn't it, from David Sillitoe's piece there, Bob, and also just any sort of Google search, you see quite clearly the influence that the Everly Brothers had on so many other musicians.
Absolutely. Just to correct you, forgive me, but I present the country show on Radio 2.
Sorry,
the Old Grey Whistle Test was way back in the 70s.
Bob, as soon as I came out of my mouth, I thought that's absolute garbage what I've just said. But I thought I would plough on regardless. But yeah, of course, everyone will remember the Old Grey Whistle Test, and your show on Radio 2 is very different to that. But you did them both brilliantly, Bob. Have I got myself out of that hole now?
Well, two things about that, Dan. The Everly Brothers did appear on the Old Grey Whistle Test in the very early days. Plus, of course, the Everly Brothers were rooted in country music. That was their background, as was the background of many of the rock and rollers, their contemporaries at the time in the late 50s. So, the Everly Brothers sit on my country show these days still perfectly. And a whole series of their singles topped the country charts in the States. So, but they were wonderful. They really were. I mean, they were partly the backbone of my record collection in the late 50s and early 60s. Literally, I bought absolutely everything they put out. Look, I've still got one or two of the old records. This is the EP that contains All I Have to Do Is Dream, which I still think is one of the most beautiful records ever released. And this is Cathy's Clown Look that took them to the top of the charts worldwide. So yeah, and I still love listening to their music. As far as influence is concerned, I mean, the Beatles always said how much they were influenced by the Everly Brothers, the harmonies, the close harmonies. The Beatles tried to emulate those close harmonies. So I suppose through the Beatles comes the influence on the music we hear today.
You had them on the Old Grey Whistle Test, didn't you, back in the 70s? And they famously had this sort of big falling out, didn't they? Not on that show, but on stage somewhere else. And it took a while for them to get back together.
Yeah, to reconcile. You can understand it, really. I mean, they were part of their parents' radio show in the early 1950s as really young boys then. And they'd been playing together on stage since they were about 8 or 9 years old. And I think they just reached the point where being one half of the Everly Brothers, you know, wasn't good for either of them. They'd been living in each other's pockets for well, all their lives, obviously. And it just came to a head eventually that they wanted to go their separate ways.
What do you think their legacy will be, Bob?
I think those harmonies, sibling harmonies, you absolutely cannot beat them, particularly the Everly Brothers, because the harmonies were so close. And I think, you know, through the music of people like Paul McCartney, I mean, if you remember the song Let 'Em In, Paul references Phil and Don in the lyrics of that great song. So I think, and you know, working in country music at the moment, I hear people talk about the Everly Brothers still with great reverence, and you hear the influence of those harmonies in country music to this day.
You've had the privilege of listening and watching them live. You know, everyone else is listening to them on records or listening to them on radio shows like yours now. Hearing those tight harmonies in person for the first time, it must be quite striking, because you're right, those sibling harmonies, wherever you find them in music, there's just something about them that makes the song easier to listen to, and really it's so tight, it's perfect, isn't it?
It's absolutely perfect. It really is two voices sounding as one. And then when you know, seeing them sing together in those olden days, one of the things that you realize about it is that it's so effortless, so instinctively effortless. You know, as brothers, they could read each other like a book. So if one went slightly up or down the scale or whatever it was, the other could follow without even them realizing that this is what they were doing. It was an absolutely amazing thing to watch.
Bob, just remind me how far out of date I was. When did you stop doing the old grey whistle test?
1979.
Right. Okay. So just I didn't know. I should. Can I clarify? I did know that. As soon as I read it, I thought this is garbage. But I just ploughed on regardless. But thank you for not putting me in too deep a hole, even though I was 42 years out of date, Bob. What's on your radio show this week? Come on, inform us.
Well, we're going to do a tribute to the Everly Brothers, and there's also a wonderful storyteller, country music storyteller called Tom T. Hall. He passed away a few days ago as well. I mean, we always play loads of new music, but certainly we're going to honour those two losses this week. Oh,
it's lovely to speak to you, Bob Harris. Thank you very much, and thank you for your memories of the Everly Brothers as well. See you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Totally got away with that.
He's a lovely bloke.
Totally. No one noticed.
He pointed it out beautifully.
He did.